New Year's Eve episode of The Wise View. I am your host, as always, Sabir Aleem. It's funny, I was just listening to the song Conqueror, and that's a real powerful song. If you've never listened to it, take a minute and listen to it and kind of ponder the lyrics. It's the end of one and the beginning of another. And I'm looking at a lot of the posts on Facebook, and I'm seeing a lot of posts that are talking about purging their friends list. People purging their friends list, and just kind of taking a look at, you know, who has made positive contributions, who has had interaction with you throughout the year. And you know, I see that post every year. Every year I see the same post over and over and over again, and I can tell you I'm not changing my list. My list is going to stay just where it is. I'm not purging anything. I delete things along the way. I will block you along the way. I will remove you, listen, along the way. And that's not always the case in life itself for me, because, you know, there's a lot of things that I need to delete from my life itself, and I'm working on that, and we'll talk a little more about that as the show goes on. But most importantly, it has to be understood that when you accept someone's friend request, you need to ask yourself why you're accepting their friend request. Because when they sent that request, they were the same person before the submission of the request. So to have the expectation that that person is going to be any different once you accept their friend request, it's not on them, it's on you. It's on you. Right? Because you know a person's character. You know their circle. Well, you should at least know. Right? Now, in my case, right, I have a nonprofit organization. I'm about community events. I'm about community betterment, empowerment of an individual, those kind of things, right? So I'll accept just about anybody's friend request. There have been some questionable requests that have come through that I have not accepted, because after going to their page and looking at their pages, I'm saying, okay, so what is your intention? Because sometimes people will just see that you have a plethora of friends, and they'll just, you know, do a friend request so that way they can use your resource as theirs, or your resources as their own. So they really don't care anything about what it is you have to say or anything like that, but they just want to access so they can market their own products or their own agendas. And that's not going to happen for me. So I'm mindful of some of those, but usually I'll accept, you know, just about every friend request. And even on LinkedIn, I have probably about 1,000 LinkedIn connects, but I can tell you that I probably haven't met a tenth of them. But they send it. Now that's a different resource. That's about connections. You know, that's about a network of people, professionals, you know, who are doing things. So we all should have, you know, that kind of connection. We all should have that network of people. And when you see people, you know, who are posting things that are kind of questionable, maybe you need to block them. But when I keep seeing these posts, I've seen so many posts today. Don't be mad if, you know, you try to post something and you're blocked, and, you know, don't be mad because I removed you from the list, and then lay blame on the other person. Tell them, well, you know, you just haven't been one of those positive, influential, resourceful kind of people, whatever the case is. But I mean, that speaks volumes about you. That speaks volumes about you. You know, and you look at where you put yourself. Because the amount of friends that you have accepted, in many cases you'll find you just accepted them, you know, to befit your own self. So you can say you have all these friend connects. To me, it doesn't matter. You know, it doesn't matter. If you're posting a whole lot of ratchetness and all that stuff, I'll block that stuff. But if you're, you know, on most days posting, you know, some sensible things, I'll leave it there. It's just not that deep for me, right? It really isn't. I just don't do all the ratchetness. I get that stuff off. That's just not where I'm at. You know, so you can go through your phone book and you can delete telephone numbers from people you haven't talked to in years, and this, that. You know, it's just, for me, it's just nonsense. Because everybody has something to offer in some capacity, right? But you also have to look at, there's some people who just admire you. There's just some people who like to hear some of the things that you have to say. There's just some people who enjoy viewing some of the things that your people you're in a circle with, you know, are putting out there. So it's not always about you. They don't always have to, you know, thank you and repost you and recognize you and respond to you. Sometimes they just want to listen. Sometimes they just want to watch. Sometimes you're actually mentoring somebody from afar, unbeknownst to you. So that's fine if that's what you want to do, but just do it. Posting that you're going to do it, I mean, how offensive is that? It's like almost a threat. Well, you know, if you haven't been one who I have been in contact with on a regular basis, or one I hear from on, you know, some level of frequency, well, you're going to be on that list. So what? Who cares? If that's your approach to me, you disconnect me a long time ago. It doesn't even matter. I remember having a brother some years ago. I probably want to say this is probably about 2012, 2011, and you know, somehow or another, me and the brother got connected. I don't know who requested who is a friend or whatever. Matter of fact, I think, if memory serves me correctly, he sent me a friend request, and I accepted the request, and we began to communicate, you know, sporadically, but we communicated, and you know, I responded to some of his posts and things like that, and then one day he posted something, and I responded to the post, and his response back to me was like wicked, and he went into all this rhetoric about, well, you know, you don't have to do this and that, you disagree, so on and so forth, you can unfriend me, and I'm saying, wow, dude, we don't know each other like that, and you're not really a friend. You don't get too deep with this Facebook friend piece, right? That's not even about that, because you're not a friend. But he went in hard, like, dude, you don't have to. And I just responded back, brother, don't post something that you don't want a response to. That's my response. Why you're personalizing it, I have no idea, you know, why. But as far as the unfriend you, that's your choice. Don't leave it to me and bounce it to me and tell me what I can do. You're the one who all up in your feelings about a response that I gave to something that you posted and obviously wanted responses to. So I'm not going to unfriend you because of that. That's your choice. But needless to say, he never, unfriended me. So I just kept it moving. But, some of this stuff we get a little too deep with. We really do. And we put ourselves in a position where we don't need to be. And we're in conflict with people constantly. Constantly. Right? But the reason we're in such conflict with people is because of the own internal conflict that we're experiencing. So it's New Year's Eve, right? 2016 is on its way out. So, and this is a time for reflection. I'm not at a party. I'm not at the masjid. I'm home, just me, and I've been spending the day pretty much reflecting. As a matter of fact, this week has been a very reflective week for me. Looking over my life, decisions I've made, decisions I failed to make, decisions I need to make, changes that I need to make in my life. And it's not a New Year's resolution. It's just a matter of you should look at the year and you should ask yourself those questions. What decisions did I make this year that moved me toward my desired goal? What decisions did I fail to make that would have moved me towards my desired goal? You do those two first, and then you make your list for 2017. What do I need to do different? What decisions do I need to make for this coming year that move me toward my desired goals? That has to happen. See, you can't do anything without a plan. You never walk out of your door without a plan. Never. Before you walk out the door to go anywhere, what's the first thing you look for? If you're driving, you make sure you have your wallet with your driver's license, your insurance card, those kind of things, your registration. You need to have those kind of things, right? You need that. You need your keys so you can lock the door when you go out, or even have a key so you can unlock the door to get back in, right? You need to be dressed properly, right? Those things. So you should have looked at the weather, what the weather's going to be like. Do you need a jacket? Do you need a hat, sweater? Those kind of things. Are you dressed properly? Right? Do you have your money? Because like me, I take my card out sometimes. Sometimes the wife may have my card, or one of my cards. She may have the debit card. She may have the credit card. I need to make sure I have those things with me, because I can leave out and don't have one and be forced to use the other when I don't want to. Because I don't always use the credit card. I don't always use the debit card. There's a method to how those cards are used. But I'm saying all this to say that you're leaving out of the door, right, prepared and with a plan, right? And also part of that plan is making sure that your car is equipped with the things that it needs, just in case. So you have a spare tire, you have some fix-it flat, you have some flares, you have some reflector rectangles or something like that. You have a first aid kit, you have a blanket. Do you have those things with you? Right? Because you need to make sure you're prepared. Anything can happen. And if you don't have those things along the way, you're stuck. You're jammed up. You're jammed up. Such is the case, right, in life. So if you haven't achieved your goals this year, you need to be asking yourself those three questions. What decisions did I make to move me in that direction? What decisions did I fail to make? And what decisions do I need to make for the coming year in order for me to move closer to my goals? Right? So one of the things that I wanted to focus on tonight in this show, because this is important, leaving this year and entering into the next year. And I wanted to talk about patience. Sabr. My name is Sabir. Sabir means patient, perseverance. So Sabr is pronounced without the I. It's Sabr, S-A-B-R. And that had been, I was going to change my name to Sabr before I officially did it. And I said, well, Sabir is fine. Sabr means patient. And so I want to talk about patience and tolerance. But I want to talk about it from a perspective of faith, right? Because when I chose the attribute severe, right, I chose an attribute that I was going to strive toward. Not just because it sounded nice, not because I just thought it was a wonderful name to have, but I wanted to put a name to myself that was going to describe me, but also define me. That means that when you hear the definition of my name, do you look at me and see me as such? The other point to it is that having that name, I hear it over and over again because that is my name, and it reminds me to strive towards that. My last name is Alim, or is Alam, which means knowledgeable, something else that I strive for. So I chose two attributes of God that I would place upon myself as a name and strive towards those things. So I want to talk a little bit about patience from a faith-based perspective, because regardless of what you practice, right? If you practice any formalized religion or you just believe in God, you have to understand the significance of this foundation of sabr, patience. So I have a book, and the book is so named Sabr, Patience and Tolerance, right? So it goes on to say, linguistically, patience means to hold or to keep something back. In the realm of Islam, which regardless of whether it's Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Catholicism, Taoism, whatever it is that you practice, right? In the realm of such, patience is linked to three things. One, obedience to God. Two, avoidance of God's prohibitions. And three, patience with God's trials and tribulations. And I'm going to stop there for a second. When you look at patience meaning to hold or to keep something back, right? That means putting things in place, defenses that keep away the enemy that brings forth the evils of oneself and this life. That means things around you, right? So the whole piece means that you have to establish an army. That means that you have to put more between yourself and that behavior. Now, when I say yourself, right, we have to understand that the self is comprised of the id, the ego, and the superego. And you can join me tomorrow on Spot at 9 a.m. Well, I will continue the conversation on the id, the ego, and the superego. Last Sunday's show was specifically on the id. This week's show will conclude the id and begin talking about the ego. But when you understand oneself, right, and I say put more between yourself, right, and the evil. You have to understand what lies within you. Because when you look at the term evil, don't look at evil as being satanic, monstrous, any of those things like that. Look at it from the sense that this is something that impedes your ability to interact positively with the world around you. Right? That's what I want you to look at it as. This keeps you from being able to establish that foundation of character, right? Of integrity, right? So, holding your tongue, for instance, when something happens that you find displeasing, how do you do that? How do you hold your tongue? It takes practice. You have to look at what you're responding to or what you're reacting to. Why are you reacting to it as such? Why are you reacting to that person in the way that you are? What space are you in? Are you in your feelings about something? Right? Do you dislike that person? Or do you dislike a thing that they did? What's happening right now where you can't hold your tongue, where you feel the need, you feel that you must act improperly, right? And it's the same thing with people people outside of you who act improperly, and how you react to those circumstances. Because a lot of things can be avoided through silence or an appropriate response. Be it a verbal response or a non-verbal response, right? When you look at keeping something back, it's the same thing. So when I used it, when I was talking about people purging their friends list, right? You look at keeping something back, right? As like, well, you could have purged your list all year long. So all year long, what did you get from that person or those people that was so displeasing, so disheartening, that brought about such discontentment within you, right? Because you allowed it. And you want to say that, you allowed it. But what was it about the things that transpired that caused that? Because the person doesn't respond to your post or say a whole lot, there wasn't a whole lot of interaction, that justifies the means. So that's speaking to your character. That's not speaking to theirs, once again. So when you're looking at to hold something or to keep something back, you have to look at what role you have in that, right? When you look at obedience to God, right, and you look at what patience means, right, when you're obedient to God, right, or you're striving to be obedient, because we're all striving to be obedient, right? You have some who consider themselves to be devout, ascetic. You have those kind of folks, right? And they don't even see where asceticism is forbidden. It states that in the Quran, that strict adherence, that you miss out on the worldly things that are there. You know, for not just your enjoyment, but for you to your enlightenment as well, because things happen in the world, and they're part of our learning tools for us, so we can continue to nurture that foundation. And sometimes we lose sight of those kind of things. But you have to focus on what it means to be obedient, because if the focus is on obedience and servitude to God first and foremost, we tend to do less of the stuff that interrupts our spirit, that makes our foundation unstable. Because see, you can't serve two masters. And part of what we tend to do as human beings is we find ourselves serving two masters. right? We call ourselves being obedient and servants of God, but yet we allow another human being, right, to supersede that in many ways, which is why our spirits are often so unsettled, because we allow that interruption to happen, because we get off course when we get into relationships with other people. They take us off course. They send us in another direction. And then when we go through our feelings, when we get in our feelings about situations with them, and then we're looking the other way, like we're turning away from God. We stop doing the things that we were doing that were in alignment with our obedience. Like I can tell you, for me, like I'll miss my prayers. I won't be consistent with the prayers. Sometimes a day or two will go by because I'm so unsettled. I'm so unsettled. And that doesn't mean that throughout the course of the day that I'm not, having conversation with God. It just means that I'm missing my salats. Right? I'm not reading. I'm not studying like I need to. I'm not embarrassed to say that, but there are many who are. But there are many who are missing theirs as well. Don't talk about it. Keep faking and act like they. But I'm a human being. You're a human being too. You are too. You're missing yours too. That's those of you who miss yours too. Do them hurriedly. Do them improperly. Right? Or just miss them. But your sin and is no greater than mine, nor is mine any greater than yours. A sin is a sin. Shortcoming is a shortcoming. Right? But when you deviate from your focus of being in alignment with God, right? Because of another person or other people. It don't have to be your husband, your wife, your family members. It can be anybody that you are allowing to occupy space within you that unsettles your spirit, causing you to be off course. Right? Which means that then opens the door for you to violate other prohibitions. Right? Other prohibitions. Right? So if you are not supposed to commit a certain acts, if you're not supposed to be in certain environments, if you're not supposed to do certain things, and we'll talk a little more about that as we go on, right? Then, you're not supposed to do them, but you're doing them because of where you are in your spirit. Your spirit has been unsettled by another person, by other people, by things outside of God. Every time you get out of alignment, it's like all the little misaligning cousins jump out. You start doing things that you ain't been doing, and your whole psyche is off. Your whole psyche is off because of what you have allowed to enter into your spirit. Because once your spirit gets off track, right? Then your mind gets off track. Your body gets off track. Everything is off track. You're all over the place. You're discombobulated, right? Which is why the Muslims are so happy when Ramadan comes around, because it's a realigning. It's a realigning. But we have to be not only consistent, but persistent in our servitude and obedience, right? The other part to that was being patient with God's decreed trials and tribulations. Listen, a raindrop doesn't fall without God's permission. A leaf doesn't fall from a tree without God's permission. A hair doesn't grow out of your face without His permission. This is part of what happens, This is part, you grow hair, right? This is all because of what that burst, that star, that bee, and it is concept of these things happen. And everything else that happens to you, for you, whatever way you want to term it, as a person, happens because He said it should happen. Because He's allowed it to happen. And sometimes people look at things that happen to them and blame him for them happening when they actually had a full role in why they happened in many cases. But then, like, okay, so you gonna say, well, I got my leg broke, so that's God's fault? That's not what I said. I said trials and tribulations, right? I was talking to a co-worker the other day, and she's been having like severe medical issues, especially concerning her back. And we were talking about how, like, you know, when you get out of your routine of workout and things like that, and how you're affected by it. And I was telling her, I said, well, you know, sometimes, you know, God has a way of making us stop for a reason. And sometimes the extent of the injury or that thing which has stopped us is based on how long our attention needs to be had, so we can know and come to understand why we were stopped. So you can look at things in different perspectives if you choose to, but, you know, throwing your back out is one thing, and how long it's out is another. While your back is out, what are you doing with that time? What are you looking at that as being a sign of? Is it just for you to say, well, I was just lifting some stuff and I lifted it wrong? Or are there things going on in your life that you really needed to be stopped for? So you can take a look. So you can take a whiff. Smell the roses. You know? And I was telling her how now I walk a little slower so I can internalize the aroma of those roses. Right? And there's a difference. So there's trials and tribulations that are decreed. And you need to understand, you know, that they're going to happen, that they're supposed to happen, but you need to learn from why they happen. Right? What happened? And what can you get from it? Because there should always be some kind of learning curve in everything that happens in life. Always. So we're all faced with trials and tribulations. And you understand, trials are just that, trials. They don't last forever. They don't last forever. It's a trial. How do you get through this? How do you work through this? While you're working through it, what are you learning? What are you doing different? What lens are you changing that you're looking at life through? What changes have you made as a result of that trial? And the same with the tribulations. Right? As a reason for everything. Everything is a learning curve. Everything is a learning moment. Right? So it goes on to say, as for obedience to God, it can be trying and burdensome for a believer at times. And I talked about that. You know, it can be trying and burdensome. So when I find myself, you know, missing, you know, salats, not getting up, you know, to make my salats, and I coming home after work and making my salat like I'm supposed, and all those things like that, right? I've convinced myself that what's weighing on me is putting me in the condition of, like, I just don't want to do anything. I'm just tired. I don't feel like it. Doesn't mean that I stop loving and honoring God. It means that I have given something other than God power and control over my spirit, to the point that my thinking is even off. All of my actions are even off. They're off. I start slipping back into old habits, old behaviors, old ways of thinking and doing. And don't realize in all of that how much more I'm putting on myself, right? Which it talks about in here as well. Every so often, the strain on the body stemming from performing one's duties to God may be due to a lack of strength or fatigue. And again, it comes down to that, right? That when we allow things outside of us, be it your job, you know, a car that you just really need to get rid of, a relationship that you really need to just get rid of, you know, a friendship that you just really need to let go and let it be where it's going to be. Whatever it is that you keep allowing to drain you, right? It's just exhausting. Whatever you're allowing to overwhelm you to the point where you have gotten out of alignment with God, that's what you need to purge yourself of. You need to free yourself of that kind of stuff. You need to get rid, whatever it is, right? Because that's what's draining you, and it's taking you away from your intended course. Your intended course. And that should be trying to be in alignment with the will of God. Period. And when you see that you're all over the place, when you feel that tension, like I have felt over the last month, or maybe even two, to be honest, I have felt the tension within. I feel the frown, the scowl I continue to have no matter what's going on. I can be in the middle watching TV, but I can feel it. And then I'm looking at myself and I'm seeing all the things that I have not been doing, all the things that I need to do, right? All the things that I've been doing that are not putting me where it is that I want to be. Avoiding my responsibility of servitude creates that as well. It creates that. It stresses me out when I'm not making my prayers on the times that I'm supposed to make them. When I'm not studying, that stresses me out. And then the flip side of that is so much going on, you know, that I'm frustrated with so many things. The smallest things are irritating me, right? I'm trying to bring resolve to some things that seems like there's no resolve happening. And all these things are going on at the same time. And the unfortunate thing is that, you know, when all those things are going on at the same time, the first thing that many of us tend to do is disconnect from God. We disconnect from God because we're so connected to the source of our discontent that we don't even think that it's necessary for us to be in alignment with that which can bring about contentment, which can free us. We get locked into the discontent. But that's that id again. And look it up and go check out the show from last week on Spot when I talked about the id. The id wants what it wants, when it wants it, and it wants it now, and the id never changes. It stays that way for life. And when we don't get what we want, and we don't get it when we want, we go into this whole bag, man. You know, of frustration, irritation, anger, resentment. We go through all of those things, right? And it pulls us away from the true source of our strength, where our true strength lies. It's with God. And we don't have to feel that at all. But that's where we get stuck. So it becomes burdensome. Faith. Being in alignment with faith becomes burdensome. But what's burdensome is the situation, the circumstance we find ourselves in, the condition we find ourselves in. So I'm in a regrouping stage already. I'm already regrouping. Because I've done some reflection, some self-reflection, and I've seen some things. Right? And back to the book. On patience, in the realm of maintaining patience while avoiding God's prohibitions, the believing man and the believing woman are to refrain from committing unlawful deeds. They must overcome their baser self, which incites, right? Which incites one to do evil acts, lying, deception, fornication, adultery, intoxication, theft, etc. are all consequences of yielding to the baser self. The baser self is that id. That's the baser self. And what we should be focusing on doing is separating, putting more between our id, our baser self, and our responsibility as servants and conductors of right conduct, of right living. That's what we should be doing. And that's where the ego and superego come in. But you can find out more about those two on tomorrow's Side Spot show at 9 o'clock. Right? In order for a person to avoid falling into these major sins, he or she must seriously exert effort to gain control of themselves and their desires. You got to get this thing under control. See? And these are the kind of things that you should be looking at right now. As you come into the new year, you should be looking at these things right now. What is out of control in your life? And if you're trying to control others, that's part of the problem. That's where you're out of control. Because you're trying to control others. Right? So I didn't even realize it, folks. It's New Year's. It's 2017. And just know that these are the things that I want you to look at. Just look at these things. It's a new year coming in, folks. But you have to see what you have failed to do, right, to move towards your goals. And you have to look at what you did to move towards your goals. And you have to look at what it is that you need to do in this coming year to continue moving towards your goals. You have to. Happy 2017. Happy 2017. And I say that, literally, because you have to tell yourself, happy 2017. It's going to be a great year. Make the change. Do better. Be better in 2017. Thank you for joining me. I'll see you all tomorrow, 9 a.m. for Side Spot. Peace.